Hi everyone, Deacon Ed McCormick here at St. John the Baptist Catholic Community. I've just come from our parish food drive and I wanted to share with you another video on the meaning and significance of Jesus' resurrection. In the last couple of videos, I've been emphasizing how the resurrection of Jesus is Jesus breaking through that wall of death and returning back to the disciples and to us, sharing with us his risen life, launching the new age of peace, pouring God's Spirit into our hearts, renewing our hearts and minds, reestablishing and renewing relationships, and launching God's new creation. Well, in this video, I want to step back, if you will, from the kind of immediate impact of Jesus' resurrection and look at the hope that the resurrection offers us and the world and all of creation. I want to kind of look now at the big picture. What is the hope, the Christian hope that emerges from Jesus' resurrection? And I want to talk about this by sharing with you a couple of images. The first one is the first fruits of the harvest. The second image is victory, a victory in a battle. The third image is of new birth. The fourth image is of new creation. And the final image is marriage. Each of these I'm taking from the New Testament, from Paul's letters and the Gospels. And these are used by the writers of the New Testament to express the hope that the resurrection offers us in our world. So let's start with the first one, the first fruits of the harvest. You can imagine that first fig tree that's produced the first fig, or the first olives, or the first wheat that is growing in the field. And the writers of the New Testament, especially Paul, think of Jesus being raised from the dead as the first fruits of this coming harvest. You know, that first piece of fruit, that first group of olives, they anticipate the rest of the olive orchard being in full bloom. And so the resurrection of Jesus is the first fruits of the anticipated full harvest in which all peoples and all of creation will share in Jesus' risen life. Here's the second image, victory. In chapter 15 of 1 Corinthians, Paul talks about how with the resurrection of Jesus, death itself has been defeated. The victory that Jesus' resurrection wins is a victory over death and all the forces associated with death. Disillusionment and destruction and violence. And so in Paul's mind, what has begun with the resurrection of Jesus one day will mean that death itself will be defeated. There'll be no more suffering, no more tears, no more death. This takes us to the next image, that of new birth. In chapter 8 of Paul's letter to the Romans, he speaks about creation herself groaning like a woman in the last stages of labor, and that what the resurrection of Jesus is beginning is a new birth for all of creation, and that right now that new birth has begun. The birth pangs are happening. The full birth of the new world hasn't occurred, but it is about to come. And this takes us to the next image, that of new creation. You find this particularly at the end of Paul's letter to the Galatians, or in chapter 5 of 2 Corinthians. And Paul's drawing on this image from Isaiah chapter 65. Paul's mind, with the death and resurrection of Jesus, God has begun to recreate all things. Now notice, it's a new creation. Creation is not going to be destroyed. Creation is not going to be eliminated. No, because creation is God's gift to us. It's what God continually gives. With the resurrection of Jesus, it is a new creation. The universe will be flooded with God's presence. At the end of chapter 15 of 1 Corinthians, Paul uses another image to flesh this out. And it's the image of the waters covering the sea. And he says that when the fullness of what has begun with Jesus' resurrection occurs, God will be all in all as the waters cover the sea. And of course, the waters cover the entire ocean. And with this image, Paul is saying that with the resurrection of Jesus, he has launched what will one day be true, that God's presence will permeate all of creation. Every person, every plant, every flower, the farthest reaches of the cosmos. God will be all in all, and God's universe will be God's temple where he dwells with Christ at the center. Here's the last image, and it's marriage. I encourage you to read Revelation chapter 21 and 22, where the author envisions this marriage between Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, and Christ. And with this image, he sees the heavenly Jerusalem coming down and uniting with the earthly Jerusalem. And this image is filled, this scene is filled with fantastic images. There's no more sun. There's no more ocean. There's no more temple. There's no more sun because now the light of God dwells with us. There's no more ocean because the ocean is the symbol of chaos. And with the resurrection of Jesus, when heaven and earth are married with Christ at the center, there'll be no more chaos, no more death. And this will be the launching of the recreation of all things. So my friends, if you start to really appreciate these images, you see that Christian hope is not simply about life after death. It's about life after death. It's about the marriage of heaven and earth with Christ at the center. This is what the Eucharist anticipates. This is what the saints anticipate. This is what Christ is the beginning of, and why we emphasize him as fully human and fully divine, because he's begun the reconciliation and remarriage of all things. See you in the next video.